I believe that everybody has a story, and I'm fascinated to hear them. So come with me as we take a walk down Fascination Street.
Hey, streetwalkers. Well, you're not literally streetwalkers, but now that I've got your attention, I am Stephen O'Reilly, and I have a podcast called the Bar Star Podcast. And since you're listening to the Fascination Street podcast, I think you should check out my show. It's just as interesting without all the famous people, because Steve has connections that I just do not have. But if you dig podcasts about music, working musicians, and other random shit that I decided to talk about, based around music, of course, because that's what I do. I'm a working musician for the past 30 years, then you need to check out the Bar Star Podcast. You can get it wherever you get your podcast, on any platform, and make sure you check out barstarpodcast.com. Now back to the one and only Steve Owens and whatever the hell he was talking about.
Welcome back, folks. This episode is with Kevin Hale. Kevin Hale is a lifelong Louisvillian and the host of Shooting from the Lip podcast. Shooting from the Lip is a podcast based in Louisville, Kentucky, which focuses primarily on local pop culture and sometimes even healthy discussions on national issues. In this episode, we get to know Kevin and find out how he got into podcasting. Shooting from the Lip is not his first podcast. We also talk about what made him decide to add a video component to his show after 3 years. And finally, we end the show with a miniature brainstorming session about how we can both improve our podcasts. Enjoy, guys. This is the host of Shooting from the Lip podcast, Louisville, Kentucky's own Kevin Hale.
Yeah, talk to me, yeah.
Welcome to Fascination Street Podcast, Kevin Hale. How are you doing this evening, sir?
I'm doing good, Steve. Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely, my pleasure. We have a mutual friend, and I heard you on his podcast, Stephen O'Reilly, on the Bar Star Podcast. And
yes, sir.
I really enjoyed the episode, and you piqued my curiosity, so I wanted to see if I could reach out and get you on my show so we can get to know Kevin Hale a little bit better. Sound fair?
Fair enough. To be honest, did you listen to the entire show?
I did. And I thought it was really funny that towards the end, it was obvious that you had been drinking.
Yeah.
It was a pretty long one, and it was like, I don't know, 2.5 hours or something like that. And
about that, right, yeah.
And the funniest part was at the very end, you're like, well, I mean, we got to do another one. We didn't even finish. So I'm looking forward to the, part 2 of that. What's got to be a 5-hour interview, I guess.
Probably, yeah. Stay tuned.
So, Kevin, where are you from? Where did you grow up?
Born, raised in Louisville, Kentucky. All my life here. Family, everyone still here with me, and kids are here, except my oldest lives right outside of Washington, D.C. My son-in-law stationed at Andrews Air Force Base, so that's why they're there. And I have 2 grandsons, from my oldest child as well. So
I have no idea how old you are, but from the pictures and from your voice, you don't sound old enough to have 2 grandkids.
I appreciate that, and I kind of take pride in that. I'm 51, so I'm thinking I'm halfway past my duration on this planet. My goal is to at least be here 100 years. So.
Well, is that your goal? Really? Is that your goal?
It'll happen when it happens. Put it that way.
How old were you when you became a grandparent?
Well, he's oldest is 6, so I was 45.
All right, cool. Well, I mean, I don't know why I acted surprised. I made my grandparents in their mid-30s.
Oh, well, good Lord.
Actually, I think they were probably in their late 30s. Yeah, I think they were. Okay. They were 38. I think.
In the 30s, right? Yeah.
We do things
a little differently
down here in San Antonio.
Texas, yeah.
Yes, sir. I did live in Louisville, Kentucky for about a year and a half. That was in,
nice.
I think it was 2013, right before Christmas. We moved there, and then right about May of 2015, we decided that just wasn't for us, man. So we came back home.
Yeah, that's a good point because San Antonio, bigger town, the argument for here is, we're definitely not, one of the more thriving big time cities, New York, LA, Chicago, San Antonio, whatever. But for what we do have here, I'm, like I said, born, raised here. It's got enough for me.
No, it has plenty. It was a great town. The people were amazing. I tell people all the time that if you could put niceness or friendliness on a scale of 1 to 10, San Antonio is probably about a 4, maybe a 5 on a good day. But Louisville, Kentucky it's up in the high 9s. Everybody in Louisville was so friendly and so kind. Like just complete strangers were just the nicest people ever. So the reason that it really wasn't for me is that, I'm born and raised in San Antonio, and for all intents and purposes, this is the desert. And we moved in December of 2013, and we weren't there a week before we had about 17 inches of snow.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
And it was the longest, coldest, snowiest winter I've ever seen in my life, obviously. But when the snow finally did melt in April or whatever the hell it was, everybody was nice enough to tell me, oh, no, it's never like this. You just caught it on a weird winter. Except for the very next winter, it was the exact same thing.
Yeah, I hear you. So are you saying, seriously, the weather dictated that move back?
In all honesty, it was a contributing factor, but it was not the deciding factor. The reason that we moved there is that my wife had got a job to work for this company that was headquartered there. And even though they were headquartered there, for the whole year and a half we were there, she was working in Austin, Houston, Dallas, and Fort Worth. So I was in Louisville freezing my ass off by myself while my wife was in Texas without me.
Oh. So you moved from Texas to Louisville, but the wife worked in Texas.
At the time, she was opening psychiatric hospitals all over the country, but the company was based in Louisville. And so, they were said, well, you're a corporate person and the headquarters is here, so you have to live here. And then they shipped her off. I mean, she came home about every other weekend. But, and I traveled, to go hang out with her in different various cities in Texas, but it just really, it didn't make a whole lot of sense for us to stay there if she was going to be here.
No, I hear you.
So, you're born and raised and growing up in Louisville. What did you want to be when you grew up?
I'm still growing up. As a kid, visions of sports. I had some athletic ability, so, I had that notion, but that didn't pan out. And then at a very early age, my early 20s, so in college, I wound up getting into corporate America. I was working kind of part-time while I was doing the college thing, and then that part-time quickly turned into a full-time opportunity. I kind of jumped on it. Yeah, I was 20 years old. So it's over 30 years I've been in corporate America, majority of that corporate IT. So it's kind of been my thing. Fortunately for me, and I say this with all due respect to those who do it, I quickly learned that the manual labor thing, working outside in the heat or the cold, that just wasn't me. To this day, people will shake my hand and give me a compliment that, for a guy, I've got pretty soft hands. It's because I work in an office.
Soft hands? How manly.
I'll own it. In the most manly voice, I say thank you.
Do you want to try that again in an actual manly voice? I'm just kidding. So you're in a corporate IT world since everything was running on a Commodore with DOS. And When did you decide? Okay, so you have a podcast. It's called Shooting from the Lip.
Mm-hmm.
When did you start listening to podcasts? Like, when did you first find out what a podcast was and get involved as a listener?
Technically, Shooting from the Lip is my second podcast, and I'll jump into that in a second. But I want to say probably Joe Rogan. I'll somehow, some way managed to start listening to some of his podcasts, and he got me hook, line, and sinker. And I've been on the Joe Rogan Experience bandwagon shortly after it was birthed, and I'm still along for the ride. To be brutally honest, I'm trying to be the Joe Rogan of Louisville podcasting. It's not interviews, it's conversation. And doing my podcast, I realized that when I got started, I felt like I'm one of these people that I know a little of a lot of things, and I'm always ready, willing, and able to engage in conversations to learn more or to understand why someone thinks or, do the things that they do. Again, it's just, I think I'm a very personable person, and I realized I'm all about a good conversation. Joe Rogan is what kind of kick-started it for me, and then I thought, I'm going to give it a shot, so.
What made you think that you could do that? What gave you the confidence to just start a podcast? I mean, you're in Louisville, you're in IT, you're not in front of a camera or in front of a mic. You don't really have any experience as far as I can tell so far from your story. What gave you the confidence to think that you could start a podcast?
I felt like I was always ready, willing, and able to have conversation with people and carry on the conversation. Smart enough to speak on, whatever topic we were talking about, but also be good at listening as well. I stopped being shy a long time ago. So to be able to just go out, I'm a huge music fan. I've fortunately got a lot of friends who play music. I can go to venues by myself and have the best conversations with people. I'm approachable. It's just a matter of, wanting to have some good conversation and understand why things are the way they are with some people, through that curiosity. Podcasts are kind of a happening thing. Why don't I just put myself on a platform where I can have these conversations, document them or record them, and then, share them.
And so you said that you had a podcast before Shooting from the Lip. Tell me about that podcast.
Mm-hmm. It was called Inhale, Exhale with Captain Hale. Obviously a shoot on my name. And it was just me and a guest grabbing a topic, inhaling the topic, and then purging out our thoughts, exhaling our thoughts. So that started actually more in line of a kind of a pop culture thing where I was just really kind of chatting it up with friends of mine who were in music or some type of arts or things happening here in town. And then I'm a huge fan of the paranormal. And one night I had a couple of paranormal people on who were like into ghost hunting, and it's a great conversation. And they are part of a paranormal website that has their own internet radio, and they invited me to come on and be part of that. And I jumped on board. So I stopped doing kind of a pop culture thing, and for several months I was strictly doing paranormal podcasts, and I had a great time doing it. And so that kind of took me about a year's worth of time doing that, and then decided to kind of break away from that and get back into more of the pop culture thing. And that's where I gladly dropped my name from the podcast. Podcast is not about me. It's about my guests or people I'm talking to. So through just some brainstorming, I knew I was going to get back into pop culture. I was going to focus on Louisville. I wanted it to be non-scripted. I wanted it to be strictly 100% conversation, more of like a shoot. Shooting from the hip was a name that first came to mind, and quickly I thought, no, I'm just talking. It was an audio-only podcast, so I went with lip, and that's how the name was born.
Gotcha. Now, when you were doing that paranormal podcast for those folks, was your show like on their network, or how did that work?
No problem shooting their horn. It's liveparanormal.com, where this website, I think now has over 100,000 members on this site. So I'm doing my show, and it was through this Blog Talk Radio. I'm doing the show on Blog Talk Radio that was through their website, and you had thousands of people would tune in each week, just paranormal fans. And was so I'm still into the paranormal, but it gave me access to a lot of national people, people from Coast to Coast AM or these UFO investigation shows that are on History Channel or whatever, and just had a really good time with that. It just kind of ran its course, and then that's kind of where I decided to focus more on Louisville, kind of get back to the pop culture thing.
Those episodes of Inhale, Exhale with Kevin Hale, are those available anywhere?
I think I have them on my Shooting from the Lip YouTube page. They're probably somewhere on SoundCloud as well. I think I still have copies. One of my favorites, if you're a paranormal person, you have to be familiar with the show called Coast to Coast AM. It's a nightly.
With Art Bell?
Before it was Art Bell. Now it's George Nuri. George took over for Art. George has been there for several years, but one of my prized interviews was with George Nuri.
Really?
George has been, obviously he's the host of Coast to Coast AM. He's been on all these UFO shows. The paranormal thing gave me access to a lot of higher profile guests, and I definitely took advantage of it, had a great time doing it. But it got to the point where I can only talk so much UFO or ghosts, and that's, one major reason why I decided just to, again, focus on doing the pop culture thing with Louisville and creating a kind of a different identity from Inhale, Exhale, and then, Shooting from the Lip was birthed.
Hey guys, it's Kevin Hale, host of Shooting from the Lip podcast, the Shooting from the Lip Experience. I do a podcast here in Louisville, Kentucky that focuses on local talent, local personalities, doing my part to give local people a platform for some conversation. My podcast includes people in business, music, film, comedy, sports, politics, paranormal, and we also talk some trending news and pop culture. You can find my shows on all of the podcast platforms, Shooting from the Lip. I also do video. You can find those on my Facebook page and YouTube channel. Again, it's Shooting from the Lip. Check out the show, show some support, give me feedback, comments, and be a part of Lip Nation.
The episodes that I've heard, you talk to this lady who, can't remember her name, but she is one of the Vava Vixens, which is a burlesque show. Now, when we were there, I believe it was 2014, we went and saw Vava Vixen at, I can't remember, at Headliners, I think that's what it was called.
Yeah, exactly.
And, for Valentine's Day, and it was one hell of a show. It was amazing. So, other than that, like, how does Shooting from the Lip reference pop culture?
I've had sports. I have people from the film industry, music, the culinary. I mean, anybody who is kind of anybody in town that has talent or have access to things that is happening in town, I'm all for having, conversations with those people. Politics, religion, anything is on the table with my show. And again, I do it in a style. I'm over 4 years in with Shooting from the Lip, and the first 3+ years was strictly audio. So in March of 2018, I changed it to kind of, again, do my best Joe Rogan impression in town, where I added video, but I take the audio from it and upload it to all the podcast platforms as well. But there's video of all my shows that are exclusive to my Facebook page and the YouTube channel. So again, just anything that I personally feel like falls into that pop culture category is game, is welcome on my show. And so far, lately, it's been pretty fun, focusing on that format.
Well, that sounds awesome. How much of a pain in the ass was it to add the video component?
A little. It changed everything as far as the way I was doing it. Because before, I don't know if you're familiar with Blog Talk Radio. Blog Talk Radio it's a website that gives you a online dashboard so people can call in. They call into the show number, and it does the recording for you. But it's strictly audio, so it's kind of like this. The sound quality, not the greatest, and again on that platform, there's also you're dealing with if you have more than one guest on. Say I'm interviewing music bands or whatever. If there's more than one guest, you got people kind of talking over each other, and with something like Blog Talk Radio, there's a bit of a delay with some of your conversations. So, you wind up talking over people, or there's dead air because you're trying to not talk over people. So doing on Blog Talk, the content felt good, and I feel solid or really good with my content of each show. But to kind of follow in Joe's footsteps, to add video, fortunately, I have a friend who plays a weekly music gig at a bar here in town. And when I was talking out loud about taking the show on site and recording it, doing video, he suggested the location, which has turned out great. So all that basically does, I do the video, I record it on my iPhone, but I have a mixer. I have 4 mics on the table. Everything's going into the mixer, and then from the mixer, it connects the audio, to the iPhone as well. So, all of it's recorded eventually on the iPhone, and then it requires me to, do some editing and stuff before I upload it, upload a show. So.
You have 4 microphones going into your iPhone?
They're going into the mixer, and then I have one output from the mixer going into the iPhone.
Well, that's dope.
Yeah, but it gives me recording of an iPhone these days. The video's good. The audio is very good. Using quality microphones into a quality mixer, and then again all of it hitting the iPhone, and then I take the video files and run it through a Windows app, Movie Maker, do my editing there, and then upload it to all my platforms.
So the place that you record, that location, it's called Baxter's 942. Is that right?
Yeah, it's in the Highlands.
Oh, okay. How often do you record there?
Right now I do it weekly, every Tuesday night. Unless there's holidays or, unless I need a night off for whatever reason. But, yeah, I do a Tuesday recording that typically takes about 3 hours of my, actually a little more than that, about 3 hours of my time, give or take, to record however many segments or guests I have lined up. It's about a 3.5 hour night of recording each week that's, dedicated to my weekly show. So, again, the venue gives me a great feel for conversation, and plus I kind of dig the background ambiance of the bar because I'm away from the main bar, but you can still hear people conversing in the other room and hear the in-house music that's playing.
Cool. So I noticed that on the audio version of Shooting from the Lip, the episode numbers are a little bit weird. You'll have episode 347, but there's 4 of them. Can you explain that?
Yeah, that's basically what I do. And you bring up something that I've struggled with the last month or so about trying to maybe do differently. But the way I do a show is that it's like each Tuesday night is a show night, but I do different segments because I have different guests lined up. So maybe one Tuesday night, I have 3 different segments with 3 different guests, talking about 3 totally different things. So when I upload that segment, I still use, to me, the recording night is Shooting from the Lip at, 370. That's how this past Tuesday was labeled. But there's different segments within that show, and I upload it separately, each segment. So each upload for the audio has is guest specific. The way you ask that is, I kind of struggle with that because I think that's probably the right way I should do it. But that's kind of how I've kind of fell into this format since I started doing it at Baxter's, because I just have multiple segments, but I still kind of lump it into that one episode number. So thanks for bringing that up and reminding me that I need to think more about that. I'll be laying in bed tonight, not being able to sleep, saying, "Damn you, Steve, you made me think about that."
There you go. That's my goal. So before you started, I think you said in March you started recording at Baxter's?
Mm-hmm.
Before you started recording at Baxter's, on site, so to speak, were you doing it the same way with like 3 or 4 different guests with the same episode number?
I was, but what was happening there, because it's recorded on Blog Talk Radio, it records the whole episode. When I upload it, it's the audio from Blog Talk Radio. I didn't chop it up for each segment. I just would upload that one Blog Talk episode altogether. And then I would identify this time of the show, this is the guest, the next guest starts at this time of the show. That is probably the way I want to go back to doing it as far as the output. But when I went on site and I'm recording it with the phone for video, I don't keep the video rolling. As soon as I'm done with the guest, I shut the recording off, because I'm doing mic checks and all this stuff in person, make sure, everyone's voice is coming across as good as possible. I, record each segment by itself. Thus, I have the audio available in a segment only basis versus the way Blog Talk would give me the whole show.
And this is just a question. This is not me picking on you at all, but
no, welcome.
So let's just take episode 347. So you have 4 guests on episode 347. Like, what made you put a 4-guest episode out instead of 4 separate, maybe half-hour episodes? Like, what made you decide to lump a bunch of guests all together?
That's a great question. And my only defense or answer to that is that I just use that each Tuesday night in my head was an episode night, which happens to have 4 parts within the episode. So, and that's really it, because I've got 3 hours basically to do my recording. With each guest that I have on, not every guest is able to give me, an hour or close to an hour's worth, whatever.
Right.
A lengthy. Some segments have been as little as 10 minutes. And it's a good question. And it's something that I do think it does add some confusion when someone goes out there and looks at the way I label it, SFTL. You see SFTL 347 and the name of the guest for that segment. You go back and you might see 347 4 times because there's 4 different guests. And that, in some people's mind, they think, I've already listened to 347. Wait a minute, didn't I listen to that? But it's a different guest. Why is it? Yeah, so again, these questions are going to keep me up a little longer than I wanted to stay up tonight, because this is going to be noodling in my head.
Well, to be fair...
It's a good point. Go ahead.
To be fair to me, like I said, I'm not trying to pick on you. I'm just, my own curiosity is what's driving these questions. I think maybe Stephen O'Reilly, when you were on his show, I think he sort of touched on it a little bit, but in his version, because I think you asked him, has one gone so long that he broke it up into 2 episodes? And he said yes once, but he found that, he got a lot less listens to part 2 than part 1.
Yeah, he did. You're right.
And so I'm wondering, and obviously you would know better, but I'm wondering if episode 347, if all 4 of those different segments have wildly different download numbers.
Mm-hmm. They do, and they will, because I have what I think is a core base, a following of the show that will listen to everything that I upload.
Sure.
But then obviously there's a lot of people will listen to a upload based on the guest. And,
right.
Facebook, believe it or not, is my driving force when it comes to the whole podcast thing. I get a majority of my listens through the people watching the videos on Facebook.
Really?
So it's, so it's, when I'm uploading it, I'm tagging the guests, and the guests are sharing it and all that stuff. So, yeah, when it comes to, Twitter, for instance, Twitter has been little to no use, for my show. Doesn't do much for my show.
That is so funny.
Yeah. Facebook is, a lot of it's visual. So Facebook is a driving force. Even YouTube, when I put stuff on YouTube. Now, YouTube, I kind of do it different. When I do a YouTube upload, I upload what I call the full shows. So I combine every segment into one file and upload it to YouTube and it's labeled, SFTL 347, full show at Baxter's on this date. Within, the description on YouTube, it breaks down the time mark where each segment lines up. So I do it that way on YouTube. Is that probably the way I should do it? So across the board, maybe. Or maybe I have to, I'm really starting to think making those segments their own number. You might see Shooting from the Lip 370 for one of the segments and then 371 for the next segment, and start doing it that way. I'm toying around the idea of adding more nights or more days to doing it, because my goal with the podcast is to not be involved with corporate America anymore, and the podcast becomes my source of income. It's a realistic goal, and I'm working very hard to make that happen.
Well, take this for what it's worth, and you can throw this away and delete it or whatever you want. But might I suggest, it sounds like you have enough content to release probably 5 times a week, or at least 4. You're having, 3-4 guests per episode. And if one was so inclined, you could, split those up and then put out one on Monday, one on Tuesday, just every day or 4 times a week or whatever that number is. And the reason that I bring that up is because when I first started doing this, I wasn't really sure how it was going to go. And so I sort of just timidly said, oh, well, I'll just do it every other week. And that was fine and all. But after 6 months, I had such a backlog of content that I went weekly. And that was cool until about 6 months later when I had another backlog of content. So I go twice a week now. And I just feel like you have so much content, in each of those segments. And like I said, I've listened to a few of your episodes, and I feel like those segments could be standalone shows, which, it would be, maybe a little less confusing for the listener, but also if your goal is to turn your podcast business into a revenue source, the only way that happens is with numbers, with download numbers, because that's all advertisers care about is download numbers.
Exactly.
And, if you split it up into 4 episodes or whatever, that's just that many more downloads that you're going to get to that number so that you can show advertisers this is what my numbers are. Again, like I said, throw that away. I'm just shooting from the lip here.
I like that. I think together, you and I'm going to go on record on your show to say that is, with last night, Tuesday night, the 8th, January 8th, being my first recording of 2019, those two segments will officially become their own. And from this point on, each segment, each guest has their own Shooting from the Lip identity. That number is dedicated to only them. This stuff, it's been in my head for probably the last month or so, as last year was winding down and I was heading into this year. But you have helped me realize I need to go that direction. So, Steve, thank you for making me make that conclusion.
You're welcome.
You're with me.
I appreciate you thanking me on my show, but go ahead and thank me on your show, too.
I will do that.
I did reach out, and I asked a friend of yours if they had any questions maybe I should ask. This is what they said. Why in the fuck do you talk about politics so much when you know that nothing changes?
That's a damn good question. And actually, if, I know, let's give a shout out to Stephen O'Reilly, the Barstar podcast. He's my buddy. He does a great podcast for the local music scene, and try to do my fair share of getting musicians on the show as well. But again, with my show, as I said, no topic is off limits. You know, reality is, whether you agree or disagree, you know, what's going on Pennsylvania Avenue in D.C. makes for some good conversation. Yeah, I'll throw out, I do lean left. I'm not a Democrat. I'm not a fan of the administration. I think the administration makes the U.S. a very divisive place. So there's always something with our president when he tweets out something, you know, I'm just reacting to it. To me, I'm not, trying to initiate some type of political, conspiracy or whatever, but it's just responding to stuff that comes out of the White House. Like it or not, like in Stephen's case, he hates the concept of talking politics, but it's, even though we're very divisive and more than not, people won't agree with the other, people still want to talk about it. And I'm open to that. I try not to talk about it as much anymore because it has kind of gotten old, the fact that even if you throw facts out on both sides, they stand by their loyalty to whatever party, even though facts contradict that loyalty. So I have toned down the political thing quite a bit. So I guess in a sense, Mr. O'Reilly is getting his way.
Well, you did say that, when you started Shooting from the Lip, you wanted it to be about popular culture, and there is nothing more popular in our culture right now than talking about politics.
Absolutely. And I welcome any and everybody, to talk, because again, a lot of it, I'm reacting to stuff that's being thrown out there. It can make for some good conversation, but also make for some really sad conversation, because when you someone who's talking to you is factually wrong, but they stand their ground for support of whatever party, it's interesting / alarming. There's a lot going on. But to Stephen's point, I have done my best to kind of tone down it, because again, we're spinning our wheels. I mean, because you're not going to convince someone, even if you got the facts, show them. Loyalty trumps all. No pun intended there, but yeah.
Definitely pun intended.
Yeah.
All right, Kevin, as we're heading out, can you tell everybody where they can find you on social media and where they can find your show?
Yes, sir. If you're part of Facebook, look me up at It's Shooting from the Lip. That's the Facebook page. You could also hit me up on Facebook, Kevin Hale, my Facebook name. I'm on Instagram, Shooting from the Lip, Twitter. I have a YouTube channel as well, Shooting from the Lip. Those are the main sources. All my podcasts are out there on all of the major podcast platforms, as well as Shooting from the Lip. So please listen, give me feedback, reach out to me. topic ideas, whatever. I'm all about a conversation. So,
Do you have a website?
I do not. And for me, Facebook right now is giving me everything I need because, all my contents, all the videos are all within the Facebook page. And there's a link, or a tab, for videos. And you can go and you can find all of my shows out there. So right now, no website. I'm toying around with the idea, but what I think I would want to do with a website right now, the Facebook page gives me those options as well. So.
Cool. You said earlier that Twitter was like the least
interaction.
Yeah. Well, you said it has done the least for you.
Right. It has. I've struggled with that. So maybe if you got pointers to maybe give me, because I do the same thing, with all my social media when it comes to my shows, just putting the content out there on all social media platforms. But I just don't get the reaction from my Twitter account as I do from Facebook. I get 95% of my interaction comes from Facebook. And I do the same thing. I do the same type of content, on a Facebook post versus a Twitter post. And Facebook has been good to me. Twitter, not so good. But, it's not, I'm not discouraged by it. It's just, for some reason, I don't get the reaction from Twitter as I do from Facebook.
That blows me away because Twitter has been a godsend for me.
Mm-hmm.
As far
now, are you on Facebook? Do you use Facebook at all?
But only recently. Like, I only just got a Facebook page for myself maybe 9 months ago, and for the podcast maybe 6 weeks ago. So, I mean, there is that. But as far as Twitter, I have booked probably 85% of my guests from Twitter.
Right. Yeah, where you're going, because I looked at some of your episodes, and one that totally stood out for me was Dr. Drew.
Oh, well then, this coming Monday, you're going to shit yourself.
I don't know if you can share it now or I'll wait till Monday.
No, I'll share it right now because your episode is going to come out obviously after Monday's.
Okay.
This coming Monday is my 100th episode. And
nice.
To celebrate, I got Adam Carolla.
Oh, that's badass. Wow.
And the funny thing is that I have met Adam Carolla like probably 6 times, and I've been to his studio 2 or 3 times. Hell, I've recorded 3 or 4 of my episodes in his studio. But
cool.
Only just now am I getting him.
No, and see, and I think,
and that's all from Twitter also. Like, I've interviewed every single person who works for him except for his audio engineer because we just haven't worked it out yet. Yeah. But I've interviewed, like, legitimately 11 or 12 of his people, and I'm friends with all of them, and it's all through Twitter.
Well, I think, with your content, you're national. And, with me right now, I'm striving to be the big fish in the little pond. So not a lot of Louisville people are on Twitter. It's like people I connect with. When I connect with a guest, I find them on Facebook. And those same people, for whatever reason, a lot of them are not on Twitter. And if they're on Twitter, like some of the guests that I think are pretty great guests to have on that kind of have some influence or impact here in Louisville, their Twitter followers, they're not breaking any records with their followers either. So I think Twitter, to me, for the national, if you're focusing on national people, outside of, I'm staying in the Louisville pond, and you're doing your thing nationally. So I think, definitely Twitter is going to work for you. For the Louisville scene, Facebook is giving me everything I need. And until I probably branch out to do more shows that are with guests outside of the Louisville area, I'll find that, Twitter will probably be able to help me there. But I guess until then, Facebook will do it for me.
I guess I didn't really think about it like that. And you made some good points there as far as, the locale and the reach. Well, one of my favorite episodes I did, I don't know if remember the show, The Shield. Yeah.
Cop show.
Yeah.
Michael
Chiklis, right?
Michael Chiklis, but one of the guys on there, if you remember the show, is named Jay Carnes, and he was a detective Dutch Wagenbach on the show. But during the Shield's heyday, it was a pretty happening show. It was groundbreaking for FX, and he's one of my favorite episodes that I actually got to do an interview with Jay Carnes, but I found him on Twitter.
Oh, cool.
When I was on with doing my paranormal thing through the liveparanormal.com, most of those national guests was through Twitter. So that's probably that. I guess that we're kind of answering our question here is that Facebook is doing what I need to, because of the, staying here in the Louisville scene. But if I wanted to go national, I would probably be able to use Twitter a lot better than what I am now. So
I think you're right. I think we talked it out.
Yeah, there you go. We've worked out. I think if you and I, maybe the budget, national deficit, I don't know if that's on our plate, but
I was going to say,
might be able to help figure it out. Yeah,
I was going to say, me and you should just have a summit at 1600 Penn, and we can fix everything, man. We got this.
The wall. Do you want to go there?
Well, I'm in Texas, so I don't know. I don't know if we could talk about that. Let's let them figure that out, and we'll fix everything else.
I agree.
Now, you said that you were trying to be a kind of a big fish in a small pond of Louisville. I think that if you break up those episodes to where you're getting, download numbers per guest, I think you won't be a big fish. You'll be a fucking shark, bro.
Well, I mean, and I want, with all due respect to any of my fellow local podcasters, I would love to be able to be the big man on campus and own it and reap the rewards from it as well. So, yeah, tonight you helped make my mind up, and so from this point on, 2019, with the help of my man Steve, each recording that I do, each segment that I do within a recording night becomes its own show, its own episode. I appreciate you pushing me, making that happen for me.
Hey, man, we got to fight this fight together, right?
Yeah, I mean, we are fellow podcasters. I'm just looking out for my fellow brother or sister.
Also, when you go to advertisers, like once you start seeing the impact of those separate numbers, and you go to advertisers, you're going to be able to, in essence, fit more advertising in. Like if you have one episode per week that's 2.5 hours long or whatever it is, you can only fit so many commercials into that 2.5 hours before your listeners are going to be like, come on, bro, what the fuck? But
that's another good point. Yeah.
But when you break it up into, let's say 4 or 5 30-minute episodes, you could tack a couple of commercials onto each one of those, maybe one at the beginning, one at the end, and then you're looking at, upwards of 8 or 10 commercials. So when you approach your advertisers, you can say, well, I put out 5 shows a week. I have room for 2 spots per episode. So you can have 1 or 5 or 10. You can work with them that way instead of, being sort of limited with what your availability is because, you're just putting out one massive show. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Like even Adam Carolla, he was doing his show 5 days a week, and I think he was doing it for 7 years before maybe even 8 years before he splits his show now. So like tomorrow, he's going to release one show, but it's going to come out in 2 parts. So he'll release an hour and a half part 1 and an hour and a half part 2. And in each episode, he'll have, 6 commercials, 6 advertisers. And so he puts out 2. That means he has 12 each day. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
It just gives you more room to work with and more flexibility when you go hit up those advertisers. And they're going to shit when they start seeing your numbers. 'Cause you're going to shit when you see your numbers. When you break your numbers down, when you start seeing the split of, 4 or 5 times what your numbers are right now.
So, podcast revenue 101 lesson from my man Steve. I appreciate it, man. This is like free. I mean, where have you been? Where have you been on my podcast life?
San Antonio.
There you go. You were here. You were actually in 2004. But yeah, so in that range I was starting. So I know you're on your 100th, but how long have you been doing it?
Remember, so it's a little bit weird because, like I said, the first 6 months, it was every other week. And then the second 6 months, it was every week. And now it's twice a week. So my first episode came out July 3rd of 2017. So a year and a half.
And you're still having fun?
Oh my gosh. It's the greatest thing ever.
It is. I think we both will agree is that every episode is unique. The types of conversations you're having with, I'll speak for me, and the types of conversation I have with each guest, it's totally different. The only thing it's scripted is I basically have one or two bullet points to get the conversation going, and it's free flowing from that point on, and really nothing off the table. And I'll have guests come on, and a lot of it are times that they've got something to come on and promote. Whether it's music or some type of event they got going on. But then I keep them on long enough for us to talk about other things that are not directly affiliated with their work or their craft or whatever. And again, a lot of that is kind of piggybacking off how Joe Rogan does it, and probably, I'm sure Corolla as well. So it can be fun. And I think in this day and age, man, just especially with people, sometimes I try to line up guests who I know we don't share the same opinions, just to see at the end of the segment, could we get done? Because I'm at a bar. We get done with that segment and walk to the bar and have a drink together. And more times than not, that's been the case. We can still find something, at least one thing, in this day and age to agree on. Even if we come into the episode with totally different views on something, at the end of that segment, we could find one thing that we could totally agree on, laugh about, whatever, and then share a beer to close the night with. Bringing people together, kind of spreading good karma, trying to douse the negativity and douse the combativeness that is, on social media and not just up here, and in the real world too. I think, at the end of the day, we're all in this together. We're all brothers and sisters. Caring and showing some care and respect is not, it's not a bad thing. That's kind of cool.
It is kind of cool. And I was going to say, I've interviewed roughly 100 people, and of those 100 people, I'm still on friendly terms, and, I still talk to probably 60 of them. So, besides the awesome conversation and, getting to meet these people, I'm still friends with a lot of these people. Like, I talk to O'Reilly almost daily, and we've never even met face to face.
He's such a good guy. And I'll tell you what, monster drummer, but even better person. He just, again, and I'll give a shout out to the Louisville music scene. There's so much talent in this Louisville music scene. And Louisville's not as big as the really big cities out there, but I would not have to leave Louisville to have to go somewhere else to find great music or great talent. I've got enough here. This town gives me enough every day to live, to learn, to appreciate the day. And thus, my podcast is a platform for, those people, talents, and whoever to come on and express and share.
Hell
That's who
yeah.
I am.
Well, you're doing
Hell
it right,
yeah.
my friend.
Yeah. Hale. Yeah.
All right. So, Kevin Hale, thank you so much for taking the time to hang out with me on Fascination Street and letting us get to know you a little bit better. I really, really do appreciate this time. I know it's a little bit late, but we made it work, and boy, was it worth it. I really, really appreciate it, Kevin.
Thanks so much for having me on. Good stuff, Steve. Continue doing your thing, and I look forward to listening to your shows as well. So
Thank you so much again, dude. You have a great rest of your day, and like I said, I appreciate it. I'll talk to you later. Bye, Kevin.
All right. Thanks. Bye.
Hey guys, this is Steve Owens from Fascination Street Podcast here with a very important message. I'm awesome. I bet you thought I was going to say something else, but nope. What's important here is that I am awesome. I started this show because I truly believe that everybody has a story, and I'm fascinated to hear those stories. In the short time that I've been doing this show, I've interviewed actors, directors, writers, inventors, podcasters, musicians, pro athletes, Olympic athletes, actual war heroes, even a Bond girl and a luthier, whatever the hell that is, and of course, regular people. From people who wanted to be stars but never gave it a real try, to big company CEOs and people who got to meet their favorite president. I love getting to meet and speak with people who have a story to tell. I feel like everyone does, and it's my job to get them to tell it. You never know who my next guest will be. An Academy Award-winning actor, a platinum-selling musician, or your own mother-in-law. But one thing is for certain, you will be fascinated by their story. So come take a walk with me down Fascination Street. You can find Fascination Street Podcast on Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Spotify, iHeartRadio, and of course, FascinationStreetPod.com. Opening music is the song Magnolia from the 2014 album Intransigence, used with permission from Douglas Miles Clark. Closing music is Apollo from the 2001 album Into the Known by the band Sapphire. Thanks for hanging out with us and getting to know a little bit about our guest. We'll see you next time on Fascination Street.